Good evening, friends. Good morning, Dr. Patrick Williams. This is Badri Bajaj on behalf of ICF Daily NCR Charter Chapter. I welcome everybody to this webinar, The Power of Self-Disclosure, Uncovering Authenticity. I think this is based on Dr. Williams' book, Getting Naked on Being Emotionally Transparent. Actually, we had the opportunity to learn from Dr. Williams in Jan this year only, and then the topic was the magic and mastery of metaphor. On that day only, we requested him to do one webinar for us on his book, maybe, and which the webinar is based on that book only. And the title itself is very inspiring, Getting Naked on Being Emotionally Transparent. Let me read a few lines from the bio, although he has a very big bio, but I will read a few lines, then I will hand over to Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams has been a licensed psychologist since 1980. He just shared with me before we started the webinar that he did his PhD in 75. Oh, my birth is in 76. So, and he is into executive coaching in 1990 since 1990. And Dr. Williams was past president of ACTO, the Association of Coach Training Organizations, and he's a founding member of Harvard University's Institute of Coaching, which is doing so many great webinars and hosting great events. I think they also honored Dr. Marshall Goldsmith with some award recently.
Yes.
Okay, great. And Dr. Williams is also member of Forbes Coaching Council. And Dr. Williams was awarded the first Global Visionary Fellowship by Foundation of Coaching in 2006 for his inspiring work, that is Coaching for Global Village Initiative, and which was focused on mainly basically using coaching methodology in the developing countries and for not-for-profit organizations, for non-governmental organizations. So we are very inspired. We are very eager to learn from you, Dr. Williams. I think like the last webinar, it will be quite interactive, and I hope in case you need someone as a volunteer, somebody will come up. And so I think I should stop now. So over to you, Dr. Williams. Thank you so much for accepting our request to do second webinar. Over to you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Those of you who are listening today, and those of you maybe listening to this recording later. It's 7:30 in the morning where I am in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, and I know it's 7 p.m. or something your time. So it's always exciting for me to do this international connection so simply through Zoom. It's like, I wouldn't mind being in India in person, but this way it's much easier for all of us. So you can see by my slide here, the title that I'm calling this is a little different than the introduction that Badri did about my title, but it comes from my book, Getting Naked. And let me tell you a little bit about that, because I know that title will bring a little smile to people's face, but I'm not talking about nudity. It's not a book about getting physically naked. It is about emotional transparency, emotional nakedness. And I really feel, I say jokingly when I did a little talk, I said, we all need to get naked more often, but emotionally naked, which is sometimes harder for people. It's vulnerability. It's courageous sharing with a committed and trustworthy witness, which, by the way, could be a coach. It could be you, because you become that committed listener for people that you're working with. At the moments when people have something emotionally charged to share, they need a committed and caring and trusting witness, a listener who will hear them and suspend judgment. Now, if you think about coaching, whether you're a business coach or an executive coach or an organizational consultant or wellness life coach, your clients are coming to you to increase their awareness. They want to learn more about what's holding them back, or what creative ideas do they want to do and they can't figure out how. What changes do they want to make in their life or their business? And it's all about the person. even if it's about business, it's always about who we are and how do we show up in what we do. So no matter what your career, we are human beings, not human doings. So with the understanding that people's everyday experience, including relationships, career, money, health, or even parenting or marriage, is a reflection of our inner state. Sometimes that's called the shadow, the things that we have buried in our dark place. But it's not always scary stuff. Sometimes it's things we have given up on or dreams that we haven't shared with somebody. So the truth telling that can happen in coaching is what I have here on this opening slide. Let me see if I can get my screen. I want to get, yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I can see the whole screen. So I'm calling this talk, How Courageous Conversations and Self-Disclosure Can Transform Your Coaching. Coaching is a unique conversation space. That's what it's a very, we sometimes use the word sacred or special, inspiring space where whole conversation. Are you able to hear me? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I got muted for a moment. So that's what I'm talking about here. And you know, I urge you all, if you want to learn more about this, my little book, Getting Naked, I don't know if you can see it if I hold it up to the screen, but it's also an audio file where I read it. It's also in Kindle. And you'll learn a lot more about this. And here's what I believe. It's a book I wrote for clients, not just coaches, but clients that you can say, this will help you. This chapter will help you. When I learned coaching formally back in 1995, 96, in the early days of coaching, Thomas Leonard, who was the founder of the ICF back then and University, created a wonderful booklet that we use called Your Personal Foundation. And the bottom line of that was that as coaches, we have to have a strong personal foundation to be able to be of service to our clients. If your life is a mess, you're not going to be a good coach. If you have a lot of angst in your life, now I'm not saying you have to be perfect, you know, you don't have to be some mountaintop guru, but you do need to be aware of your learning edges, and you also need to get coaching from time to time with life challenges that come up. And Thomas Leonard said, you will attract clients who are 1 or 2 steps behind where you are. So the stronger your personal foundation, the more authentic you are, the more honest you are with yourself, and the more you do to, to live a more optimal life. There is no perfect, but the concept like mastery, you know, I hate the term master coach. I'm not a master all the time. I'm a master sometimes. But that's what life is about. So if I go to this next slide, here's a little story that I'll tell you why this became important to me. In 1975, I was getting my master's degree in humanistic psychology in a small Southern university in the United States. And one of my idols was Sidney Girard, who wrote a book called The Transparent Self. And he wrote others, but I was studying to be a psychologist. And if you were trained as a Freudian psychologist, you were never supposed to share anything about yourself. You were never supposed to engage in a human-to-human conversation. You were just being an analyst, right? But I embraced more of Carl Jung and Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers. Sidney Girard was a man that I really loved, and I had a copy of his book. He came to our university, and he came to a barbecue at one of my professors' house because they were good friends. And so I was over there, and I was 25 years old. I handed him a copy of his book, and he said, and he signed it. And then I got the book back, and I said, Professor Girard, I've got to tell you, I really hope I can write a book like this someday. And he said, give me that book back. And then he wrote in the book, Pat, if you never write your book, you have no one to blame but yourself. Now, that was a powerful statement, but here's what made it more powerful. The next day, he drove back to his home at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida, and he was working on his car, and the jack slipped, and the car crushed him, and he died. The next day, so I still have that book on my shelf with his signature to me, and this book, Getting Naked, is finally the book that I really wanted to write. I've written 5 other books for the coaching profession, but that's a story of a man who shared about self-disclosure, and yet the truth that impacted me on that day was really powerful. Now, my talk also works with the core competencies and how they relate to these transformational conversations. So whether you're an ICF coach or not, there are some competencies that the ICF works with, and one is establishing the agreement. Why does your client want to work with you? What are you going to work on? That's the beginning of truth telling, because they're wasting their money if they don't come to you to tell you the truth about their challenge. Even if they were sent to coaching by their boss, they still have an opportunity to engage with a confidential partner, a trusting partner, and establish the agreement for coaching. Coaching becomes a safe place for sharing real wants and desires and change. I know with my clients, I sometimes ask what they want, and then by the end of the conversation, I say, so what do you really want? What do you really, really, really want that maybe you haven't told other people? And there's not always an answer to that, but there usually is. You can think about it. So why clients come to coaching after all? I touched on this a little bit in my intro. It's to increase their self-awareness. It's to increase what choices do they have and how can they do things differently? How can they have less stress or more success? Or, you know, they've got this creative urge to do something different and they don't know what it is. If they didn't talk to a coach, they'd only be talking to themselves or they'd only be talking to people who don't listen very well. So in your coaching or consulting, you're the committed listener. And it becomes quite powerful just to create that space. And the difference between that and psychotherapy is there's nothing wrong with a person. It's just a human-to-human conversation about change and awareness and increasing consciousness about forces that may hold you back. Now, during my talk, by the way, if there's any questions that people want to post in the chat, and Badri, you want to share with me, you're welcome to interrupt me and say somebody's got a question maybe partway through this.
Yeah, thanks.
One of my favorite quotes is from Oscar Wilde, and I love this. You might as well be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. And when you think about that, as we grow up from our young age to that, where we're looking for who we are, we're trying to discover who we are. And sometimes we play a role. Sometimes we fake it. Sometimes we think we should be a certain way. I mean, there are societal rules and there are rules of etiquette. I'm not talking about that. But who are you really? What is the uniqueness of you, a human being, that is on this planet to make a difference? Now, you may not be, you know, who was the physicist that just died? 78 years old, the British physicist that's handicapped and in a wheelchair. I can't remember his name. Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking just died last night. Stephen Hawking, in his handicapped condition, made a great impact on the world. He was uniquely a brainiac who had a good sense of humor, and even with his handicapped condition, created new theories of physics which affects every area of life. So put this quote on your on your card for a while and think about it. You might as well be yourself because everyone else is already taken. Well, why would you be anybody else, right? Another competency in coaching is co-creating the relationship. So you establish trust and intimacy because you're a committed listener and a confidant so that your clients can share their personal and professional truth. That's the crux of coaching. It's not psychotherapy. People aren't telling their life story back to age 2, but it's like, what's true for you now? And what is it you want to stop doing, do differently, learn? And sometimes it's, I don't know. So the I don't know becomes part of the coaching space of helping people figure out who are they as an evolving person? Who are they now? What do they really want to do to leave a lasting legacy in their life? I'll get more on that later toward the end. It's important to have coaching presence. I love that concept in coaching. It's a very unique request that not only do we have our clients learn to be present for coaching. Don't coach me while you're talking on your cell phone on the highway. Coach from a committed, quiet place, inspiring place. Even if you're walking on the beach or walking in the park, you as the coach can still create presence where you're really there for that person. You're not distracted. You're not just going, shaking your head. You're really focused on them, and that's important. Now, many of you probably use some form of a wheel of life. And the reason I put this up here is because this is more powerful than people give it credit for. A wheel of life is an early informal assessment that we do with our clients where we simply ask them to tell me their level of satisfaction with each of these areas of their life. And maybe there's another one that they want to add. Like community, which would be family and friends, but maybe they want to talk about the community they live in or their physical environment. They don't like living in blank. They want to live here instead. This is an opportunity where you get to some truth with a client when you say, so what would it take for that to go from a 5 to an 8? And what is the truth about that? Why did you rate your health a 5? Or why did you rate your physical environment a 3? What is it you'd like to change about that? Because they may not have told anybody else anything about this. So that's an opportunity to create the beginnings of coaching conversations. This wheel of life is a format for using powerful questions. What would it be like if? Or what made you rate that a 6? Tell me more about that. And then another powerful question is when you say, and what else? Or is there anything else? That's how you get beyond the superficial with a client and really get a little bit more honest. It's just a fun quote that I like to put up here, and I share this with clients sometimes. Life is like a camera. We focus on what's important. We capture the good times, we develop from the negatives, and if things don't work out, take another shot. Now, I realize most people don't use an old Kodak camera like that is there, or a Browning or whatever it is, but maybe it's a German camera. But even with your iPhones today, it's a good metaphor for what life is like. I don't even like to use the term failure. They're just results. So you develop from the results, right? Just like a photograph would. Now, another core competency is communicating effectively. It starts with active listening. That means you're really participating in the conversation as a listener. You're listening to what? You're listening to what's being said and what's not being said. What do you intuit as the listener that's not being said? This is where you can some people call it the elephant in the room or the shadow. It's like, I as a coach, I hear you saying this, but there's a part of me that thinks there's more to this than what you're sharing. Now, you may be wrong, but if you ask that question, you're making sure that the client feels that they can trust you, share with you, and really get under the surface to what they really want to create or change. And that is where powerful questions come in. If you ask a powerful question, which is a question that neither one of you know the answer to, the reason it's powerful is because it's only meant to elicit conversation, to elicit new thinking, to share what's not being said, to think out loud with a committed listener. And if you ask powerful questions, don't forget you have to follow them up with powerful silence. Give a few seconds or maybe many seconds and allow the client to think in that silence. Some of the early coaches that I hired, I realized that I'm a very extroverted, very active speaker. Even as a coach, I'm an active listener. I listen with enthusiasm and action. I don't cut the client off, but I talk more than some coaches. And I realized that I hired coaches in the early days, Cheryl Richardson being one of them. I don't think she's quite famous in the United States, but she wasn't famous then. She was just a good coach. I would be talking and all of a sudden there'd be this silence. And I said, "Are you still there?" And she'd say, "Just listening." So that was good coaching for me, because if I had a coach with the same energy I had, it would have been too much. I needed a really focused listener. And then that gets to the competency of direct communication. Now, this is where the theme of my talk really comes in. Direct communication, as you know, is not the same as directive. You're not directing what the client should do. You're not directing them. You're not advising them. You're using their language. So the conversation is direct. And this is where you have an opportunity to get to naked sharing. And that's when you say things like, "What else? What is stopping, draining, or blocking you? What is a dream you've given up on?" Or, "I hear you saying this. Tell me more about that. Let's get under the surface a little bit." Now, naked sharing doesn't have to be deep, dark secrets that you're afraid to share anybody. It can be something that the client hasn't told anybody about, what they really want to be doing, that they want to find a way to quit their job and go do something else, or they want to find a way to have better health, or they want to write a book, or they want to, they might have a talent that they put on hold. So it's not always dark stuff. It's just things that haven't had the light shined on them. And coaching helps get the light shined on. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Now, that can be socially, politically, family, business, personally, but things that matter to you. And then maybe bigger than that, things that matter to all of humanity. We all reflect our piece of humanity. And we know there are some humans that aren't living a very positive existence. In fact, I sometimes say the animal kingdom would be very happy if humans left the planet. I'd like my friends who are gorillas and whales and big cats that'll let me hang around, because I really love them. But I think humans as a whole mean well, and in the coaching profession, we're trying to lift up the consciousness and the way of living that will help people, business, families, and even the planet improve. So getting naked is a metaphor for wholehearted truth expressed. So why did I write the book? Well, for years, I was a psychologist, more in positive psychology. I didn't buy into pathology. I felt everybody had uniqueness. Everybody could overcome challenges with the right support. And then in coaching, I began to realize that coaching was an opportunity where people hired a coach, but it was more egalitarian. It was more like a partnership. There was nothing wrong with the coaching client. They just needed a committed listener where they could speak what they really want. So the book, and I won't go into the details, but there's 9 chapters, and they're all kind of humorously titled, like 50 Shades of Play, How to Live Seriously and Still Enjoy Life. The Emperor Has No Clothes, Nakedness in the Workplace. your shadow, don't leave home without it. So that's some of the chapters in my book. So it has the opportunity for clients to learn about truthful honesty and authenticity in relationships, at work, with their body and aging. And it's just, that's why I wrote it. It's kind of a human guidebook. My theory about emotions, and I'm doing a talk on this to health and wellness coaches in Ireland in September. Emotions in coaching sometimes are ignored. Some coaches think, oh, I can't get into emotional. What if my client cries? Or what if they share something difficult for them? That doesn't mean they can't be coached. Emotions, and notice I put a hyphen there, because emotions are energy in motion. If you have something that happened to you and you're sad or devastated or grieving a loss, and if you don't share that, it festers. It kind of grows inside of you, and it needs to be shared. And a client can do that and then move on. The energy will shift once it's shared in a safe place with a committed listener. So don't be afraid of emotions in coaching. You can say things like to your client, I can see that this is very emotional for you. I can see that there's a lot of energy attached to this. Can you share more about that? I'm listening. I'm here with you. I mean, I even cried with a client who told me about the death of her son. She was my client for 4 years, and then her son got killed crossing a railroad track. And that, I mean, good Lord, that would have been for me to think of my own daughter getting killed. So I said, I'm going to listen, but I want you to know this is also causing me to have some emotions. So that's an opportunity where you get to be real authentic. And let me just insert here. That's part of what I want you to get out of my talk today and my book. And when I mentioned the word personal foundation with you as a coach, you want to model authenticity for your clients. Now, if something devastating has happened in your life, either you're going to have to take a break from coaching, or you're going to have to put it on hold while you get your own coaching. But if you're emotionally charged by something a client shares, that's authentic. You know, that's you being authentic in the moment, that they hear that you really get them. And that's important. Research shows that attempting to minimize or ignore thoughts and emotions only serves to amplify them. And this is in a great book that my colleague Susan David wrote called Emotional Agility. She's hit the big time. She's been on all the TV shows, TED Talks, selling lots of books. I'm very proud of her. And that's a term that I have used for a long time, that emotional agility is the ability to choose your emotions. You can put them on hold sometime, but you have to come back to them. You can't ignore them. Otherwise, they just get bigger. What we ignore gets bigger. Suppressed emotions inevitably surface in unintended ways. And this is a process that psychologists call emotional leakage. So in coaching, if you notice that your client's energy, even if you're coaching by phone, you can sense when a client's energy changes. You can sense when their voice gets quieter and they're thinking, or there's just some sort of, maybe you hear a big sigh, you know, like, well, those are things to pay attention to, because that's the body revealing a level of stress or emotional leakage. I hope that's making sense to everybody. So another competency in coaching is facilitating learning and results. So a big goal of coaching is to create awareness. And I said, duh, new awareness of what has not been revealed or discovered. That's why people are hiring you. They want to learn what they've not learned, think what they've not thought, and dream out loud with a committed listener. They want to find new ways to create what they thought was unapproachable. They don't want to live in mediocrity. Otherwise, they wouldn't hire a coach. You know, we all have gaps between where we are and where we want to be, and that is where new awareness comes in. So in coaching, you also help them design actions and goal setting and manage the progress. But this is where the rubber meets the road. The quote that's famous here is, "The truth shall set you free." If you can get a client speaking their truth, they'll get so inspired to say, okay, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do this. Whatever it is, they want to get in better shape, they agree to exercise. They want to write a book, they start doing it. They don't just talk about it, they begin to do it. They share their truth with you, and together you create goals. Now let's think about something for a minute. I want everybody to take out a pen or a pencil and write your signature with your dominant hand. Just write your signature 3 or 4 times, as you always do. Take a piece of paper or a card and just write your signature. Okay, and now I want you to put the pen in your other hand, your non-dominant hand, and write your signature 3 or 4 times. For most of you, what you will notice is the non-dominant hand signature looks very, almost like a grade school kid, an elementary school. But here's the awareness. If you had to improve the skills of writing with your non-dominant hand, you could. You could write as well with that as you do with your dominant hand. It just takes practice. It takes new management. And so that's a way where you can show the brain, just because you have an area of your consciousness or your skill sets that aren't enhanced yet, they can be. In my book, I talk about becoming real, and I've capitalized that. If you've ever heard of the book called The Velveteen Rabbit, it's a great children's book that my mother didn't read it to me when I was a child, but I found it and read it to my 2 daughters when they were kids. And it's a great book. I think they even made a movie with Meryl Streep narrating it. But the book is wonderful. And so I talk about the Velveteen Rabbit approach to living a vital and well-lived life. And the short story is, there's this stuffed rabbit, velveteen fur. He's old, his eyes are falling out, his fur's getting worn, and the kid who loved him as a young kid now is wanting all his mechanical robots and train sets and high-tech equipment, and the Velveteen Rabbit just goes in a closet and in the throwaway pile. And then the kid gets sick. He gets sick with the flu, and he wants the Velveteen Rabbit. Well, the Velveteen Rabbit is talking to the Skin Horse, another toy in the toy department, about how can I become real? I want to be a real rabbit like the ones I see in the garden. And the Skin Horse, who's his coach, says, you need to be well-lived. You need to have your fur falling off. You're aged, but you've lived a full life. And when you're truly, truly loved, you'll become real. And that's what happened. The boy asked for the Velveteen Rabbit, and the rabbit gave him love and helped him feel better. And then the rabbit became a real rabbit. So it's a great story about overcoming scars and hurts and disruptions in our life, lessons that we've learned. Most coaches have a life well lived. You wouldn't be a coach if you haven't exhibited a life well lived. You need to be pretty high functioning and well aware of living a healthy and productive life. And like I said earlier, you don't need to be perfect, but you're not going to attract clients if your life is a mess. So you may need to get some coaching first. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. This is something that actually comes from, I think, the 60s. It's called the Johari window. And I know that almost sounds like a Hindu term, right? But it's really named after 2 guys named Joe and Harry. That's where the word comes from, Johari window. It's a good thing to use in business, and I talk about this in my Nakedness in the Workplace chapter. There's 4 quadrants what you know about yourself and what other people know about you. That's the open self. So, they know, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the hidden self, information about you that you know, but others don't. That's the stuff you keep a secret. That's the stuff you don't share. And then there's the blind self, information about you you don't know, but others do know. So other people can see that you have this tendency, or that you fall apart in disbelief or negative belief when you're in a work situation. Who knows? Whatever it is, other people see it, but you don't. And then the fourth quadrant is unknown. It's unknown to others and you. So it's yet to be discovered. The goal is to have the open self quadrant become bigger. And so the other squares would become smaller. So this is another good tool for having conversations with clients, and you can read more about it online, but it's a great visual tool. So how will you create more naked talk? And how can you do that with your clients or yourself without wanting to fix or treat or get in the way? It's not your job to fix. It's just your job to hold the conversation and to be a conduit for new learning, new choices, and a new zest for living. Well, I think how you can do that is to really get beneath the surface, almost like in the movie The Wizard of Oz, where the dog pulls the curtain back and shows that the wizard is not really a wizard, but it's just a man and a machine creating deep voices and magical incantations. It's in coaching, we can pull the curtain back. We can help the client speak their truth and live their truth. And that leads to an increasing human zest for living. So we all hide stuff. I mean, we all have things that we don't share with everybody else. Maybe things that we've had in the past that we felt guilty about or hurtful about, or just whatever it might be. But again, as Susan David said in her book, if you minimize or ignore them and the emotions, they only serve to get bigger. They only serve to amplify. In coaching, a lot of schools train in this, and I did early on in my early coaching books, talk about energy drainers. Energy drainers are things in our life that can be big or small, but if they're persistent, they need some different strategy. An energy drainer can be the pile of laundry that you haven't done for a month and it's bugging you. It could be a conversation that you need to have with your sister or your mother or your wife that you haven't had. It can be a decluttering of a physical space, but a decluttering of an emotional space as well. Once you take care of something that drains you of energy, you get that energy sucked back into your body. And then we talk about energy gainers. So a real quick story about that. I had a client who was a lawyer. I coached lawyers for a while, and they would come to a training on how to run a smarter practice and work harder, not smarter. I mean, work smarter, not harder. And I was coaching her, and I said once, about 3 weeks into our relationship, I said, so tell me how you became a lawyer. What's the story of why you're a lawyer? And she got kind of silent, and she said, well, the truth is I never wanted to be a lawyer. My dad had a law practice, and he just assumed I would want to take it over, and he paid for me to go to law school. And I really like law. I love studying law, but I didn't want to be a lawyer. And I said, well, what did you want to be? And she said, a teacher. And I said, and why did you not become a teacher? And she started getting a little tearful, and she said, I didn't want to disappoint my father. I knew that teachers didn't make much money. I knew that teaching wasn't a noble profession like lawyer. So the long story short is, we talked about how her love of law could stay with her, but instead of practicing law, what could she do that fed her desire to teach? And she ended up getting a job at Tulane University teaching law. So she was more happy teaching about law than being a lawyer. And that's just a great story of where she had strengths and abilities and desires, but they weren't being used in the right way. If she hadn't shared that with me, she'd probably still be stuck in an unhappy profession. There was another one I don't really have time for. I won't share with you about that, but it's in my book about a dancer, a woman who was in her 70s, and we found a way for her to relive her desire for dancing. In coaching, clients often come for the bottom part of this. They want to have more or have less of something, or they want to do something different. What we want to get to in coaching is the being part, the top of the pyramid, the who that they are, their inner self, their true self. And that's where it fits into this whole transformational coaching conversations, because you're not just talking about the have and the do. You're talking about who are they and how can who they are affect what they want. I don't know if you've ever seen The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. He's a Mayan descent, a Mexican descent, and four little truthful statements that I think are valuable that I kind of live by. One is be impeccable with your word. Tell the truth. Be authentic. Don't take anything personally. Now, this is where a lot of us get into trouble, because most things that happen in life are opinions or thoughts. You know, they're not. It's not always the truth. We just think that they're factual. If somebody says something negative about you, you don't have to believe it. You know, you can just say, well, that's interesting. Let me find out if there's any truth to that. But you don't need to take it personally. Now, that takes some work, but it's a very freeing statement. Don't make assumptions. We do that all the time. We assume we know something, and you might be right or you might be close to right, but check it out. Have the conversation to make sure. Arguments in marriage and arguments in the workplace, a difficulty with adolescent children and parents is that they didn't quite hear what they wanted to say, and they need to clean up the intention, because sometimes people take it wrong. I say to my coaching clients, if I ever say or do anything that upsets you in any way, please tell me and I will fix it, because that is never my intention. I never want to say anything that's hurtful or harmful or disingenuous. And then the fourth rule is always do your best. Now, all these are things to live up to. Kind of nice, but you know, not always what you think. Now, last time, some of you might have been on my call, I talked about metaphors. Well, metaphors are a good way in conversation and coaching to get at this naked truth, to find out what's under the surface. Even the title of my book is a metaphor, right? Getting naked is not about taking your clothes off. It's about emotional nakedness. It's about bearing your soul, sharing your truth. We sometimes use the phrase, the naked truth. So that's a metaphor. So in coaching with client, listen for metaphors, direct or implied. Listen for what they're saying. If they're saying, I just feel stuck between a hard place and a rock, explore that with them, because the truth that's in that is more easily shared in a metaphor than maybe in an emotional statement. So sometimes the picture and the image is a safer and less emotionally charged way to get at something. And you can offer metaphors too, or use guided imagery to see about maybe their future self. You know, a lot of coaching schools say, so let's close our eyes, imagine your future self 6 months from now. What's different in your life then? And how are you living your life? And what's the job like? So that gets to some understanding as well. And then you can also use stories that have a teaching component, like I shared with you about the lawyer and the other story about the dancer that's in the book. You might share a story with a client that relates to what they're communicating about. Now, a big part of naked living and getting naked is understanding a person's uniqueness. This goes for you, the coach, and for your clients. So what is the uniqueness of this person? What's their purpose? Everybody has one, and we don't always discover it right away. But I truly believe that every human being has a unique purpose. And it may not be to to create some transformational invention. It may just be to be a good father or husband or leader or community builder or neighbor. But whatever it is, are they living their uniqueness? Now there's a exercise I want to do with you now over the telephone here, over the internet, and I'm going to send this to Badri as a handout, so everybody will have access to this. And actually, it's also on my website at drpatwilliams.com. It's right on the homepage where you can download this, but it's called a personal treasure hunt. So what I'd like you to do is take out a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, and I want you to make a vertical line down the middle. So draw a line down the middle of a piece of paper, and then in an attitude of quiet reflection, here's what I want you to write. On the left side of the paper, write the names of 3 or 4 people that you have admired, living or dead. Just write down the names of people you have admired or who mentored you, inspired you, people who influenced you in your life. Just write those names on the left side of the paper. Okay, everybody should have 2 or 3. These usually come to mind right away. You know, you might be a teacher, it could be your father, it could be a neighbor, an uncle, a business partner, whoever. And it could be somebody who's dead, like I might list Carl Jung, or other people. So now, on the right side of the paper, on the other side of the line that you drew down the middle, I want you to list the reasons for why you admire each person. What qualities are you drawn to? What is it about that person that has you admire them? Think about special talents or values or strengths, acts of kindness, and ways in which these have become visible in that person's life choices. So on the left side, you've got 3 or 4 names. On the right side, you're going to write the characteristics about them, the qualities about them that have you list them as inspiring. What are the talents, the values, the strengths, the acts of kindness, the personality attributes? I'll give you just a minute so you can think of some things about each person. Okay, so everybody should have some words on the right side of the paper now that relate to the name they put on the left side of the paper. Now I want you to take that paper and fold it in the middle. Fold it right on that line. So you can fold it right down the middle and look at just the words. Look at just the words that you put on the right side that were the attributes of the person's names on the left side. But right now, you're not looking at the names. You're only looking at these words. Now take a good long look and read the traits to yourself or qualities, pausing to reflect on the words. So you might say kind, loved me unconditionally, a great leader. What are the words you put down? Do this carefully, because the traits that you have listed here about others are also a part of you. So these traits will apply to you. Some may be aspects or traits that you quietly tried to develop in your life. Others may be aspects of you that are hiding in your shadow. They haven't had the light shined on them. They haven't developed. But either way, this exercise will be a profound moment of recognition. You have these traits that you admire in others, whether they're expressed right now or not. The reason you admire them is because you want to be like them. Now, there's a second part to this exercise that you could do on your own, But there's a follow-up exercise. Think of a handful of people whom you know you can trust to be honest with you, and tell them you got this exercise in a webinar and you're following up. But ask them what they would say are the traits or attributes they see in you that are similar to the traits in themselves that they like. What is it about you? Why are you in their life? Why are you a friend? Why are you a trusted associate? Acknowledge to them that this may seem like an odd exercise, but let them know you're doing an experiment. And there's more, but then if you're really brave and willing to be naked, you can ask your spouse or the person you live with, what made you attractive back when you first met? And then do the same. What are the traits that you recognized and fell in love with, or fell in like with, or were attracted to? So this is a bag of treasures that you now have, and you can put in a metaphorical gem bag. But I love this exercise, and clients love this exercise. I hope you can do it with you, and I'd like you to, if you're ever willing to share with me any follow-up to that, I'm anxious to read them. Now, a few years ago, maybe just a couple of years ago, a woman named Bronnie Ware wrote The 5 Regrets of the Dying. So these are lessons that are passed on to the living, and getting naked with true wants, desires, struggles, and challenges. We can learn a lot from what people said who were dying. And so here's the top 5 regrets. Number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Bingo. That's the theme of this workshop. Courageous truth, courageous living, courageous, authentic living. And then number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Nobody ever laid on their deathbed saying, I wish I'd worked more. You know, we're, again, human being versus human doing. The third one is I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. That's what we're talking about. So here's thousands of people that were researched, and they said, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I never told my son how proud I was of him. I never shared my zest, so, well, why not? So these lessons that we learned from the dying is what we should take into our life now. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And that doesn't count friends on Facebook, although it's nice to touch base and maybe connect with messaging. Who have you not reached out to lately? Who have you not shared coffee with or tea? And who have you not called up and said how important they are in your life? What friend? You don't need hundreds. It's just a few, right? Your friends that you stayed in touch with. And then the last one, I wish I had let myself be happier. Now that's interesting. I wish I had let myself be happier. I want you to think about that for a minute, because who's stopping us? Who didn't let us be happier? It was us. You can let yourself be happier. And working with a coach or a consultant helping you with that is how you make the new choices. So there's another little process that's in my book that I talk to people about. Sometimes clients do have a difficult thing that happened in their life. Maybe they lost a child at birth, or maybe the son got killed crossing the railroad track, or maybe they're ashamed of a time when they got, arrested for drunk driving or something. I mean, we all have things in our past that some are bigger than others. But if there's anything holding somebody back, and maybe it's a recent situation, maybe it's a recent difficulty in a relationship, the first step is to recall the situation. Just remember it. And then you reflect. Let me think about it. How did it happen? How did I feel? What was it about that makes me so frozen? And then you reveal it to yourself. So you write it down. You write in a journal thoughts about this, like what hurts, what happened, what made me feel so devastated, what did I do, what did I wish I'd done? So you write all that down. And then it becomes a little bit more naked. The fourth one is you reveal this to another. You share with a trusted listener. I'm going to underscore that, a trusted listener. You don't share a stranger on a train, right? This is like the title of my book is to be emotionally transparent at the right time, the right place, and with the right person. You don't want to get emotionally naked with everybody. So this revealing to another might be a counselor, it might be a coach, it might be a trusted friend, it could be a spiritual advisor, but somebody you trust that you say, I just need to share this. I don't need you to fix me. I just need somebody to hear it. And that itself is quite curative. And then you reboot, just like with a computer. You just, push the restart button and say, okay, now I've revealed this. It's over. I'm through it. It's not festering in me anymore. You reboot and then you restart. You restart your life. Some of those things we never totally forget, but they're not festering inside of us. So this is the difficult things that people might have. It's not every conversation, but something that somebody's guilty about or judgmental about or hurt by, mistrusted. That's the kind of thing for this process. My last chapter in the book is called Prison Break. You had the keys all along. I chose that title because I've actually done coaching with prisoners. We've actually done some training in federal prisons, and now my nonprofit that Badri mentioned, Coaching the Global Village, is sponsoring a prison reentry program for women in New York City that we hope to spread. So to keep them out of prison. And then some of the men that I coached in a federal prison, as they got out, they're coaching first offenders so that they don't go to prison. We need to also break free metaphorically of our self-imposed imprisonment. We keep ourselves locked up sometimes and not living the life we want. So that's the metaphor, and that's the story in that part of the book. So this is my book on being emotionally transparent at the right time, the right place, and with the right person. Ways to uncover your authentic self at work, at home, in relationships, and life. And it's really my own personal teaching memoir. I share a lot about my own life in the first chapter and spots throughout there. Obviously I didn't share everything. It'd be a deeper book. But I wanted it to be a model for the fact that I can be honest about difficult times in my life or things that happen, and encourage other people to find somebody to share that with so they can reclaim their authentic self. And then if anybody is looking for ways to work with me, read about my blogs, events coming on, if somebody's got a way for me to come to India, Yahoo, just look at drpatwilliams.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can read lots of blogs that are on there and stay in touch. I want to read one more piece from a blog I wrote, and then we'll open it up to questions. So you heard me mention a little bit about the shadow, and of course, I was trained in Jungian psychology, but I quickly learned that the shadow is not just that dark stuff that we hide. I even use the metaphor of Peter Pan. If you remember in Peter Pan, he sneaks in through the window to see Wendy, and then he tries to escape, and his shadow gets stuck in the window when she shuts it, and his shadow stays behind. And Wendy rolls it up, puts it in a drawer, and then when he comes back the next night, she sews it back on. So it's a metaphor of we can't be without our shadow. We all have one. But the shadow is not always the dark stuff. It's some things that the light hasn't shined on. So here's a little couple paragraphs from a blog I wrote. We all have learned to wear masks and protective armor from a young age. And rightfully so, because life can be difficult. I'm not telling people to be totally vulnerable or totally naked everywhere in the right place and the right time. So we do need to have protective armor and masks from time to time if we're in a situation that's not safe. Life is continuously providing us information or messages. When we do not listen, the messages become lessons. When we do not learn, the lessons become problems. And when we don't address the problems, they become crises. When crises go unresolved, they create chaos in our lives. So great students of life seem to live on the level of messages and lessons, not waiting for them to become problems, crises, and chaos. They take care of them when they're getting a lesson and they do something about it. Keeping life's processes on the lesson and message level makes living so much more enjoyable. And is often said, no matter how hard we plan, stuff happens. It's what you do with it and how we respond that matters most. Having someone to share your naked truth with is crucial to your resilience. Being witnessed makes you feel held, which in turn makes you more receptive to life's bigger purpose. From there, you can become more capable to reawaken your awareness of your own inner identity, to discover your personal, professional vision and purpose, and to sharpen communication with yourself and others. The ultimate result is being able to live in such an intentional manner that who you are as a person becomes the catalyst for a fulfilling experience of this precious time on earth. We've all learned to wear masks. The world is not a place to be vulnerable all the time. Self-control defends us against intimacy, letting us track the parameters in order to avoid being absorbed. It's a very human instinct, and we're all universally proficient at that. But that's why I say you need to have someone where you can have your honest conversation with and just feel that you're revealing something so that you can reclaim a part of your humanness. So with that, let me just open it up to any questions that people have that they can ask. I'm willing to stay here for another 20 minutes or so.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. It was really great, great insights. And we have so many comments in the chat box regarding the exercise and regarding your blog. And another one loved how I could use the Johari window in a coaching session. Also,
yes.
So it's really exciting to see so many comments. And yeah, friends. So now we are open for Q&A. So in case you want to ask a question, you can write here in the chat box, or in case you want to talk to Dr. Williams, I will unmute you. So maybe we can start with the chat box. So those who have some questions, please write in the chat box. Yeah, we have one more comment from Somi. Super insight, Patrick, and quite resonates the same with me.
Thank you.
So one of the best learning lessons I have attended, how can I get to know about your webinars? I want to know about your other webinars, which are not for ICF only, like you conducted one for some European countries also. So maybe something which you they can follow you somewhere, or something which can help them.
Yeah, I think if you go to my website, I'm trying to post events on there. And sometimes I'll even have a link to a recording I did elsewhere. I did a 4-week class for the Association of Coaching in Budapest. I don't think I posted that because it's their property, but I've got some other things coming up. There's a coaching mastery seminar. You could also check out my Facebook or LinkedIn. You know, Facebook is just Facebook/DocCoach, DocCoach. And LinkedIn, just look for Dr. Patrick Williams. And my assistant posts things there. So you're always willing to sign up for my newsletter and look there. And I'm always open to doing new webinars. I'm going to try soon to be doing some online classes that are recorded. So if you've ever been to a site like teachable.com or Udemy or Coursera, I'm trying to create some classes that you can take anytime you want. They'll just be video and recorded. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, our colleague Vikram Bhatt, he had just bought your book just now on Amazon.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And as I said, it's also in audio books. I've had some people who will open the book and then listen to the recording at the same time. So sometimes you can do that. Anybody, I'd like to ask a favor. If anybody does buy the book and they like it, I'd like you to write a positive review on Amazon, because that helps me get more notice, and maybe somebody will invite me to do a TED Talk. So thank you. Any other questions that have been posted or somebody wants to ask live?
Yeah, in case someone wants to ask question, may please write in the chat box, or you can talk to Dr. Williams. So we have some more time, maybe a few minutes. So Dr. Williams, I have a question.
Okay.
In case you have a client and you are trying to maybe help him open up, and the person is still maybe due to his prior experience is not able to share his or her authentic self, maybe that not able to share the emotions,
Right.
and might be the coach is using all the techniques or strategies to inspire or to encourage that person. So did you stuck sometime like in this type of situation?
Yeah, that often happens because it can be a little what's the word? I don't want to say scary, but it's a little well, I'll just use that word. Sometimes people think something awful is going to happen if they share their truth. So as a coach, if they're not able to share it, or they're just being superficial, you could say, I want you to know that as we work together over time and you begin to trust more and more, I want you to know that there's nothing you can't say to me. I will always suspend judgment. And I just want to give you a space to reveal what it is that you're afraid of or concerned with or held back by. And together, we will look for ways to change that. I don't have any magic cures, but I do know that when people share a truth, they begin to change. They begin to reclaim energy.
Yeah.
So if the person believes that, over time, they'll share. You don't want to force it. You don't want to say, oh, come on, you can tell me, oh, you can trust me. You have to wait for them to feel that. And sometimes it's over time.
So anything which can establish maybe trust or intimacy, which you used in lesser time. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to model that as a coach. You have to model that you're gonna hold what the client tells you confidentially and sacredly, almost. They're testing you sometimes. How well do you hear? How well do you get me? Now, the other thing you can do as a coach is as you work with a client, remember, we sometimes listen for what's not being said, right? We can kind of sense that there's something between the statements. Benjamin Zander always said that good music was made by the space between the notes. So sometimes you could say to a client, I could be wrong, but I got a sense that there's something you're not telling me, that there's like some other aspect of this that you're not sharing. The fact that I said I could be wrong gives them an opening to say, yeah, no, I'm good. But they also may say, oh, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, so you're modeling for them what an honest, truth-sharing conversation is like. Coaching's not like every other conversation. It's a unique conversation, as I said in the very first slide.
Yeah.
That was coaching is unique conversation space where wholehearted conversations take place and transformation can occur. So that's why it's unique.
Yeah, thank you. And we have some more questions and comments. Let me read from the chat box. Sorry. Yeah, Rupinder wants to ask a question, and I will unmute him, and then I will read other questions.
Okay.
Where is Rupinder? Sorry. In between, let me read some questions by, yeah, great life. This is comment come question, I think. Great life lessons. Can we know when was your peak moment that you had such awesome breakthroughs?
That's a question to me?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You know, I write in my book, actually in the first chapter, that I learned very young, as a teenager, actually in a church group I was in. I learned the power of being honest with my emotions, but it was in a safe place. It was in a youth group led by my pastor, and it was very easy. You know, we learned to share things like, if you were an animal, what kind of an animal would you be? And you said why, and then but I learned that there was an opportunity to be honest. And then there's also a story I wrote once about when my father and I went to a movie because my mother was giving birth to my brother. Now, I was 9 years old and my mother was having a baby. So he took me to a movie. It was a movie called Shenandoah, which was an old movie about the Civil War, where United States Civil War, where two brothers were on opposite sides of the war. They one fought for the Union, one fought for the South, and there was death. You know, I was crying in that movie. Here I am, 9 years old, and I looked over at my dad, and he just gave me a thumbs up. You know, like, it's okay to cry, and so that there's a lot of lessons like that through life. And then my psychology studies, of course, I had breakthroughs in groups that I was part of. It's helped me be resilient. That I'm not unemotional. There's a TV show on in the United States called This Is Us. I don't know if you get it in India, but it's a great story about an American family. And if you watch that, you'll cry every week. But it's also a laugh every week. So I learned to have the full range of emotions and not be embarrassed by that.
Yeah, now we have Rupinder. Are you there? Could you please ask your question? Rupinder? Okay, let me read another question. Neha says, totally relate to what you have talked about today. And grateful for the learning. How do you suggest we improve the expression of our own authenticity during sensitive emotional moments of our clients?
Yeah, I saw that question. That's a good question, Neha. I think that's where you get to model as a coach. So if you're talking about, well, okay, let me just tell you a truth of my own. I shared this with Vadri. I just moved back to Colorado after living in Florida for 12 years, and I moved back here with my wife to be closer to our kids and grandkids. And we moved in on January 5th, and my wife became ill and died on January 28th. So that's very sad for me, of course. And yet I've got a lot of support from family and friends. But a lot of my coaching clients saw that posted. They got notice that my wife had passed away. And I gave myself a couple weeks for not working, but then I still came back and coached. And I told them, I said, I have to put that on the side. And I don't want the session to be about me, but I want you to know that I'm doing fine because of friends and family. It's very sad, and yet I've got the support. So that's a human conversation that I was able to have with clients that needed to know. Now, a new client wouldn't need to know that. You know, as long as you can be present. If something has happened in your life that you can't be present in coaching, then you'll need to take a break from coaching.
Yeah.
Get your own coach. Yeah.
Yeah, really sorry to hear that. And we had our webinar on 17th Jan only this year.
Say that again.
Yeah, our last webinar was on 17th Jan only, and your wife passed on 20th Jan.
Oh my God, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just moved here. I remember I had a cold, and we were moving boxes, and she was tired, but finally she got diagnosed with an infection and got sepsis in the hospital. So it was very sad. Didn't expect it, but life goes on.
Yeah, so I will unmute yeah, Rupinder, you may please ask your question. Rupinder. Yeah, Rupinder. It seems there is some problem with the audio, or maybe at his end. Okay, then let me read in case there is another question. Okay, there was one question, I think, from Priyanka. How, as a coach, we create a safe emotional space for our clients to really be authentic and open up? Sometimes they hold back and uncover the truth at a later stage. Can we learn the art of helping them to open up more authentically?
Yeah. And the way you do that is over time. You just keep giving the client an experience of a coaching space that's so different than any other place they have in their life. They will, if they have not had people that they could trust well in their life, and they're getting coaching. For example, I got a lot of male executives referred to me sometimes because they had to get coached. Their job was in jeopardy. And they had to begin to trust me that I wasn't going to report to their boss everything we talked about. They had some work goals to improve, but anything else in their life they wanted to share with me, they could. And as they began to trust me, I became a place where they could explore changes that they wanted to be responsible for instead of blaming other people. And that's just one example, but it takes time.
Yeah, Dr. Williams, I think Rupinder was having some technical problems. So he has written his question here in the chat box. When the coachee is venting or sharing their emotions, when it is a good time for a coach to come in?
That is like, you have to feel it. You'll feel the space. You don't want to interrupt, but eventually you might have to interrupt. You might just say, let me just ask you, what do you need from me? What do you need right now in this moment? How can I be of service to you? Because again, you're mostly listening and responding. You don't have to give advice. You don't have to tell them how to fix their problem. That won't help. Now, later on, of course, you may say, well, given what we talked about today, I actually have a wonderful article that I'd like to send you that might be relevant. Is that okay? And they say, yeah, sure. But in the emotional moment, you just give it space. You almost give them an emotional hug. Just let them be in that moment in the presence of your love and caring.
Yeah, our colleague Nidhi has, she also shared her husband died last year, and she had shared that she stopped her practice for some time, and then after handling her emotions and all that, she started again. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Williams, Rupinder also needs your advice and recommendation for pursuing some course in psychology.
Maybe I don't know. Yeah, I don't. If you're saying, so here's your question: when they're venting or sharing emotions, when's a good idea for the coach to come in? I think I already answered that question.
Yeah.
But you're keen on pursuing a course in psychology. You know, I know Badri teaches positive psychology at the university. That's a good course because it's about gratitude. It's about what can we do to positively enhance our emotions and not get stuck in negativity. So I think a course on positive psychology, even if it's just for your own learning, would be good. You don't have to go to a university. There's a lot of positive psychology coaching classes that you might take to get credit if you want, or read about it. And it does help you because you're not becoming a psychologist. You're just learning psychology. You know, just because you take first aid doesn't make you a doctor. You're just learning first aid. So.
Yeah, actually today I was attending, as I shared with you before the webinar, some conversations of His Holiness Dalai Lama, Daniel Goleman, Richard Davidson, and many other colleagues from some US and European universities. So His Holiness was saying that negative or destructive emotions have no basis, so we can't manage them. Only
Right.
positive emotions have the basis, so let's try to enhance those emotions. So that was quite exciting. And we have another question from Kriti Sen. Can we use metaphor to enhance coaching presence?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because if the client is using a metaphorical expression and you recognize it, they're going to feel you're really connecting with them. If you miss it, you know, as an assessor for the ICF, if your client is using some metaphor and you totally miss it and step over it, that's not good because they're handing it to you. If the client says, I just feel really stuck, or I feel like I'm in an avalanche going down a mountain. Well, good. Tell me more about that. What kind of avalanche is that avalanche? And how big is that mountain? And what needs to happen? So that's how you create presence of connecting to their inner self, because the metaphors are coming from their unconscious. You know, you're getting a picture, like a waking image. And that's why I love teaching and working with metaphors so much.
Yeah. So is there any other question? I think you have answered all the questions. So friends, in case you have any question, please ask now. So thank you, Dr. Williams. I want to thank you on behalf of everyone from ICF Delhi chapter and other members also who are from attending this webinar from other chapters, other Indian and international chapters. These were really great insights, great tips, and something which can be really used while you are improving self or maybe helping your clients. Yeah, as you say that as a coach, we need to use these techniques and basically being open to others, being transparent, being emotionally transparent. So thank you so much. I think there are no more questions. So it was really great learning from this session, and I hope everybody enjoyed and they asked a lot of questions also. So maybe in future we come reach out to you again for another webinar, and in case we get some chance to meet you here in person in India and listen to you and learn from you, that will be really more exciting. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone. It was great learning from. So thank you so much, everyone. Good night. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.